Welcome to From the Ashes, the Dungeon Crawler Network podcast all about Ashes of Creation by Intrepid Studios. Bear witness to the rebirth of the MMORPG genre from the ashes of an industry that has left the gamers behind. I am your host, Aggelos, founder of the Dungeon Crawler Network and From the Ashes, and I have all the guys that I had on one of our previous episodes when we talked about guilds, because you know what? I kept them locked in my basement, and I did not let them out. I fed them a little, not a lot, just enough to keep them alive. And now they're back and forced to do the rest of the show with me. So here we are. First off, you know her. She is the newest community moderator over on the official Discord and forums, Belewyn.
Thank you so much for the welcome back. I'm glad to rejoin the podcast and continue this topic.
Absolutely. Yeah, I wasn't too harsh to you, right? You were good.
It was a little painful.
Yeah, well.
But only slightly.
I know. Only slightly. Only slightly. The other one we've got here, oh my goodness, I just lost my spot. No, I didn't. Sinbad, one of the leaders of the Seven Kingdoms, an AOC exclusive guild. Welcome back, sir.
Yeah, thank you for having me back. Actually, I don't think I ever left. I was stuck in your basement for a while there.
It's true. It makes it nice and easy.
It's dark.
Yeah, well, you know. I mean, the spider infestation's gone because, you know, those days I forgot to feed you. I'm sure you guys probably just were like, yeah, I'm going to eat those because that's the only protein you got that day. So
they're best fried. Fried with a little bit of salt.
Yeah, well, salt helps everything. Telchar, one of the the guildmaster of Sons of the Seven, a PvX guild for Ashes of Creation. He is back again. He clawed at the walls, but I didn't let him out anyway. How are you?
I crawled through the dungeon and we made it back. So.
Very nice. I see that. I like it. Well done, sir. Well done. I like the pun. That was great. So we are back once again to continue our conversation about guilds. We had, if you missed our last episode, go back and check that out with these guys. We first talked about some of the early guild management tools that we were kind of hoping to see within Ashes of Creation. And obviously there's a lot to talk about and theory craft about. So therefore I had to ask these guys back because we still have more things to talk about. We're going to pick up where we left off, which was with guild participation tools. And how do you, as a guild leader, encourage people to do stuff with the guild they're a part of? I mean, with how gaming has become nowadays, with the advent of multi-guilding, which I think was the bane of guilds, period. I think is one of the worst ideas ever implemented in MMOs. It really has segmented the community. Everyone's like, oh, I have all these different social circles now, but it's like, yeah, but you don't really interact with them like you used to. Like, you don't need to anymore. So what kinds of things have we seen in past games, or even things that we'd really just like to see within Ashes of Creation to encourage you to play with your guild, the people who are supposed to be your family in the game? Ladies first. Belewyn, what are your thoughts?
So one of the things that I really loved about ArcheAge was their prestige system. These were quests that only unlocked when you were part of a guild or part of a community. And these allowed you to shop at a guild exclusive store. So by doing quests on a daily basis in terms of, like, let's take, a pack from here to there, or kill so many mobs. I know we hate those redundant quests, but this allowed the GMs of the guild to see how their members were participating amongst the guild, contributing towards the guild, and then opened up the possibility to spend those points in a guild exclusive store. And the same with Black Desert Online, so it had a little bit more advanced tools to where your participation was tracked as you completed quests or did things with the guild. And I think I preferred Black Desert's method, even though ArcheAge had the incentivized store that you could make purchases from. The tools were a lot more robust inside of Black Desert, and it really gave the guild leaders more of a general idea of exactly how active is this member.
Yep. Absolutely. Sinbad, what about you? What are some of your thoughts?
So, actually, me and my guild leader have talked about this, me and my other guild leaders. We've really looked at what we can do as a guild to kind of incentivize people playing with us, because you hate a dead guild. I mean, there's lots of people that just join and then they never come back.
Or never talk in the guild, or they're just a name that you see logged on. Oh, yeah.
Exactly. So one of the things we were looking at was similar to what Belewyn was saying, but basically guild-level events, guild-level perks, guild-level missions that basically you as a guild have to work towards. And if you accomplish these things, you get swag. So you basically get new cosmetic gear, new cosmetic benefits, like new party things that show off what you've accomplished. And not just you on an individual level, but you as a guild. And that would actually, I think, more incentivize, basically participating on a guild level, basically participating with your fellow guild members.
Absolutely. Telchar, what are you hoping to bring in so that you can encourage your guild to do stuff with you?
So there's a kind of a cool internalized prestige that the really awesome, let's say, raiding crew gets, and the various different people that are the best of the group that they have. And one of the ways that I think is a good incentive for members to join those things is a path to get that cool stuff. So like you're saying, the swag, et cetera, I think that if we are able to kind of build even quests up to a world level with the guild, and maybe even it be on a period basis, you invest the talent point into that thing on your guild talent tree, you are able to kind of create a little event that's very modular, because they can't spend that much time on it, but it'd be really fun to be able to craft something fun for your guild to do to help bring members in and experience novel content within your group. So kind of this is just a kind of fantasy thing for me, but I think we're going to reference an anime real quick, because why not? If you've ever watched the anime Fairy Tail, they have a little job board in there that has little novice level quests out in the public tavern area, but then they have their really hard and difficult ones upstairs in the secret area. It's like the off-limits ones that no one but the experienced members can go do. So if we're able to have that much kind of control over what tasks we can give to veteran members, etc., I think that'll be fun to help craft a very, cooperative environment for people to want to say, I want to go do these little large quests, I got to do this, and this to get to that point within the guild, versus just a blanket quest system. So
there we go. I had to respond to Steven in chat. So that was something that was kind of interesting. That I'm I muted myself. I want to bring up a couple points, because this is something that I thought was really fascinating. First off, bringing up a few things that from other games that I thought was really cool. Now, Belewyn, she brought this up because other guilds did. The game that I played that had guild missions was Guild Wars 2. Now, their system was a little weird, because in order for you to, I guess, you had to, again, this was one of the first games that had multi-guilding, which was, again, the bane. But to encourage people, okay, they gonna go on a little rant here. You can have 5 guilds, but to encourage you to only represent one, the guild you represent earns influence. Now, influence has been gone since then, but that influence was a currency the guild earned by you representing and doing things. Didn't even have to be with the guild. It just being online and doing things in the game, representing a guild would earn influence for that guild, and that guild could then use that to buy tokens to start these quests, which then offered cosmetic rewards. All of that I like, with the exception of, well, in this case, it's not so much of an issue with Ashes of Creation, because there is no multi-guilding, but it created an aspect, if you will, of guilds going, listen, we require 100% representation at all times, or you're kicked, right? So the whole idea of allowing multi-guilding was something that it just didn't happen. At least early on, if you were part of one of these bigger guilds, that was the only thing you were allowed to be a part of, because they would kick you otherwise. I do like that idea of guilds earning currency, but just being online isn't an incentive. I mean, not really. Sinbad, do you have something you were gonna say? Or
yeah, actually, so one of the things we were talking about was what happens like when you basically are looking at one guild versus another guild, right? When you basically are fighting these large battles, what incentives do you have to have your members come online to fight this battle with you? What happens if you win, against 6 other guilds over a period of time? You should have a level, kind of like how some other people on here were saying that once you've hit that certain level as a guild, you get these extra perks. What if you get like legendary weapons after a certain amount of time? Basically you've earned that. You've shown that you're the conqueror of all these other guilds. So as a point of pride, as a point of, I think that's got to be the biggest incentive, is basically pride in who you are, pride in your community, pride in your guild. So if you can help foster that, then you avoid these situations where people are just online but they're not doing anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and one of the things, and I'm going to pull this in, that I thought World of Warcraft did really well, at least early on, they actually had guild missions that would reward money for the guild bank. Like it was, you had to do 7 normal dungeons with members of your guild. Like it has to be majority of your guild, like 3 out of the 5 people had to be your guild, and if you did, it automatically deposited into the guild bank X amount of currency. Same thing with a raid. Same thing with PvP dungeons and stuff like that. I like those systems, that it would provide a way of encouraging gameplay, because that's something that funds the guild, right? Like I know early on in my World of Warcraft, I'm like, hey guys, it's Tuesday reset, get your dungeons in. Ask in guild, get your friends in there, because that funded our guild repairs, right, for raids and stuff like that. The money that we got there helped out everybody, and that was something that very early on encouraged people to do it. Even recently, my last time I was playing World of Warcraft, we had no issues getting those done, because people right in the beginning of the week were like, "Hey, I want my guild repairs, man. I got to do these," because it goes right into the guild bank.
Well, one of the things that you can also go along with that is it doesn't have to be just locked into like combat, PvP, or like raids. You could have other achievement levels like possession of rare items in your guild, like how many items you've found in that treasure hunt that Stephen was talking about, or even like how many recipes you've learned as a guild, or defending and assaulting other nodes, or owning your own castle, or other things like how many gathering items you've accomplished, like rare items you've achieved through that. And then each of those different levels, those like almost like an unlock level, you can basically get a unique item or unique cosmetic for your guild too. So it doesn't have to be with raids. It could be with those things as well.
So I like where you're going with that one, because one of the things that I found with my guilds in the past is always that how do you break up the redundancy of quests? What level can you expand it to so that it touches on other areas that are more meaningful to the players and add value to the players as well as the guild? And that's going to be key, because nobody wants to do the same request, as you alluded to, Aggelos, every Tuesday. Get your guild quest done, hit those dungeons. It becomes the point where in the beginning, yes, it works because people are still trying to tier their tunes up and level them and get those skills. And after such and such point, it's just, oh man, I have to do that again, don't I?
Yeah, variety.
And there you spoke about it. It's the idea of incentive. How do you incentivize players to do what is help? Because so many times, and this is more of a stigma with modern MMOs that really focused on the solo or casual experience of you can do almost everything by yourself, right? It's that mentality that it was I'm bringing up ESO again. It's actually less productive doing stuff with the guild than it would be just to do it solo or to pug it. Like, because you get less resources, you get less. It is less efficient to actually run with other people than it would be just to do it solo. So encouraging group activities in those games is almost completely on the social level of trying to make sure people like, hey, let's just hang out. You might not be getting as much as if you did it by yourself, but. And that's a problem with more modern games that gave such a huge birth to soloing, right? Like that's all you can do. There wasn't so much for this group content, and that's something that's really needed in MMOs. Without group content, what's the purpose of a guild anyway?
Exactly.
One of the things that, going into this incentive thing is a lot of people like to serve the group in this kind of situation. There is some, egoist mentality for themselves, but they also like benefiting from the group's perceived value, right? So I would like to see them, Intrepid Studios, making some very complicated and long quests for like Guildhall flair, that kind of stuff. So like if this group has done this many things, killed these dungeons, done all these different tasks and stuff, they get a different look or a different like thing they can put out in the front that says, look how cool we are, look how badass we are. And every time somebody comes past the Guildhall to go in for a service or to do whatever, they see this piece that was made as part of following the quest line that was a very difficult like world quest or something, that the group shows as a prestige versus like an individual. And a lot of people like to serve the group like that. So
I love that you brought that up, because the one thing I thought about is, remember, and legendary weapons from original World of Warcraft, like the harder ones to get, not Thunder Fury, yes, Soul Fury. What if, someone say Thunder Fury? What? Blessed Blade of the Windseeker? What if, like, those quests were something that essentially took a guild? Like, because there were whole raid elements that you literally could not solo. It's like, I remember doing the Shadowmourne quest for the axe, the legendary axe during Wrath. And there were certain things, like, you could do some things by yourself, collect the Saronite and stuff like that, which dropped from raids, so you could pug it or you could buy it, whatever. However, but there were certain things you literally had to do while you were in a raid. And the only way you could do that would be, well, not necessarily with your guild, but with a group of players. What do you guys think about the idea of legendary, quote-unquote, high-tier items that are huge quest lines, but when you do them with a guild, yes, the person who finishes it, gets Thunder Fury, but maybe it unlocks an achievement for the guild that everyone gets a unique cosmetic going, this person has Thunder Fury, but you get something, I don't know, a face tattoo for all I know that says, I helped create Thunder Fury, something like that you as a guild, even if it wasn't directly, the item didn't directly benefit you in my personal power level goes up, but it helps the guild. But by doing it as a guild, receiving incentives through cosmetic options.
That's actually something that we've been thinking about for a long time now, that how do you get these really big quest lines that only reward one person when everyone else gets nothing out of it? And they put in just as much time, they put in just as many hours to help this one person get that item. So even something like a banner, like for your guild saying you conquered this thing, would be awesome. It'd be a symbol showing what you've done. And that's so important to have that like ability to show that off, to advertise that as you basically are accomplished. You're not just doing nothing with your time.
I agree with you there, and it goes it goes much further than that if you think about it, because a lot of games try to rely on the title system, like Lord of the Rings Online. Let's kill XYZ boss and then earn a title for the guild. But where's the real incentive? You get to put something above your character's name. It becomes, where's the uniqueness? Whereas, let's say we killed the dragon in XYZ mine, and not only did we earn some type of a unique cosmetic, but because we were the first ones to ever do it, then what level of rewards could be put there as well?
Exactly.
Food for thought on the rewards. It doesn't have to be like even legendary like weapons or whatever. In this game, they can do stuff that's entirely cosmetic in like an example case of, let's say there's an ocean raid and the group is able to do it all with the boats. I don't know how this is going to happen, if they're going to have boat-based raids where everyone's have to be on specific ships and stuff. They might have that. What if the reward for killing the Kraken is a custom special ship that is assigned to the guild to use as their guild ship, like that kind of stuff. That's the people with permissions to drive it and stuff. That's the whole other story. But everybody can go and ride on the Black Pearl. Like that's what they can do with this, and enticement for big assets like a Oliphant, for example, or a golem to guard your guild hall or something like that. That's very unique, and only the people that possibly even do like a world quest that makes that the solely only place that you can get that item. And then maybe if it changes ownership, that whole thing switches to the other people that win the new situation. So,
and I really like that idea, because have you ever seen the anime Overlord?
Oh yeah,
you know, yeah. So in that, they have guild NPCs that guard the guild. You know, they've already said that you have the ability to customize an NPC with certain Kickstarter packages. What if one of the rewards was basically an NPC that specifically helps guard your guild, that's like unique to your guild? It'd be kind of cool.
It can be used in castle sieges or anything like that.
Yeah.
So it's a cool concept.
Absolutely. And when I use the legendary, like the items, yeah, that was the first thing I thought of. But it doesn't even have to be, like you said, it doesn't have to be anything. It could literally be a quest that requires you to be in a group where the only way you actually get the check mark that you've completed part of it is if you're with majority of your own guild members, right? Like you couldn't pug it. It would have to be with guild members in order to achieve credit. And by doing that, like you said, earning those cosmetic rewards, whatever they may happen to be, is something that, like one thing I thought of, again, I played Warcraft for like longer than that, very long time. I'm scared to do the slash blade. One of my favorite times, obviously during raiding, was when we, as a guild, we were never a world first. I think one of the guilds that I was in during my big progression days was like a US 10, I think we were. That was the highest we ever got, US 10, World 25. So we were up there. But those weren't my favorite experiences. My favorite experiences when we broke off and did our own guild. And we weren't world first, we were doing our clears. But when we started going for the meta achievements, doing all the weird things like doing a barrel roll, those off achievements on raids, and then getting that cosmetic reward, which was a mount. Now, obviously, you could have done it in a pug group, but it was something that after we had finished all the achievements, we all got together as a guild. We all got on our mount that we all just got and took a screenshot. That was something that was cool. Yeah. And I like the idea of limiting those things, making guild quest, if you will, that can only be completed if you are in a guild group. There's no, like, you could complete the objective in a pug, but because they're not in a guild, you don't get credit.
I agree. I think that one of the things that Steven and the others have talked about pretty much constantly now is that there will be scarcity of extremely high-end assets in the game. So that prestige level thing of being the owner of the legendary Oliphant or whatever it is, that's a thing that you as a guild maintain, and if you go AWOL, then it goes back to the wild, and then that legendary, the tier 1 event could happen again somewhere else or something like that, and then someone else could come and reclaim that to the world. Otherwise, it's off in the wilds doing its thing, waiting for the next civilization to pop at tier 6 in its zone of area or something like that. So the people desire the goods, the cool stuff, and it's always something to go reach for. If everybody has it, then what's the point?
Absolutely. I mean, that was kind of the allure of the early legendaries, was because it was so hard to get. A low drop chance, whatever, and so many people wanted it. Whenever you saw someone walk around, you're like, it was just something that was really, really cool to see. But then, as they started doing these legendary quest lines in the later expansions and stuff, it's like it was a quest available to everyone. It was a long quest, and it required raids and groups, but not necessarily a guild. By the end of the expansion, it became a necessity for progression, not oh wow, this is amazing, everyone had to have it, and you lost something there. So I mean, encouraging guilds to do stuff together, even if it's a hard cap of, if you're not in the guild, you don't get credit.
Yeah. I mean, there's also the aspect of PvP as well, not just PvE, which is the main focus right now. When you as a guild win against another guild, which I brought up before, what happens when you conquer that guild? Maybe you steal their banner, and you can basically stick that in your guild hall as basically a sign of something you guys did together. Like almost like a scalp, essentially. You're taking that guild's banner from them. And that encourages further play, because maybe they can try to steal it back from you guys, which then encourages more participation.
Absolutely.
One of the things to remember is that they've already stated that castles, the 5 of them, will have flying mounts, like the big ones. So that is the prestige of it. Like, oh, who is this month's rider of whatever dragon? Like, we got to go and get it. That's that competition aspect. You know? it's also the competition of the civilization owner too. So if it's a guild trying to build their own T1, up to Metropolis, that's something that they can claim as bragging rights. And if you're able to bust it down and take it from them, that's a big, a big flat, notch on your pole that says, look, we're better than you or whatever. And that's a lot of the draw for the PvP thing, is the continued showmanship in the long run. So
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys. So that was pretty much ideas on participation. We're going to move on to alliances. Okay. Ooh. This has been brought up because obviously with the type of game that this is going to be, alliances are going to matter, because regardless of how many people you have in your guild will have its own limitations, whether it be the fact that, hey, another guild controls a nearby city, our city is low on resources that are just scarce where we're at, we need to make deals. We need to make a deal with the devil, so to speak, in order to continue our existence. Alliances, bare minimum functions for alliances. I mean, when I started out, the only game that I ever knew that actually had formalized alliances was Dark Age of Camelot, and that only consisted of a chat channel, and that was your alliance. It was an alliance chat, which was something that just did not have a lot of function to me. I mean, you could message and say, hey, this is where we're at, and you could do rally calls, but that was kind of it. So I'm kind of curious, what are your guys' thoughts on what is needed for an effective alliance management? Telchar, we'll start with you.
So, and for me, the kind of initial thoughts on alliances in general are going to be more about how effective groups of people will be in the larger scope of the world. So if you kind of consider some of the numbers that they've given us, if we have a 10,000 player server and we divide the number of civilizations out to 5, you can probably expect between 1,000 to even more, up to maybe even 2,500 per Metropolis level civilization. And of course, there's going to be people that aren't interested in dealing with that, but the core of each of those concentrations of power will likely be from multiple groups of guilds working together. So I need political interface so that we can manage who the allies are within our circle. I need to know if, like, where that power is distributed within each metropolis. So like there's 5 guilds and we all have their own vote or whatever for like the scientific node. I need to see all of the distribution of that. And I don't really the taxing and alliance taxes and stuff like that. That's all, part of it. I don't really think it's as important as having a really in-depth way to track the political environment around you, your allies, neutrals, and enemies effectively. So,
now, when you say taxes with an alliance, in my mind, anyway, whenever you're taxing an alliance member, it's not so much an alliance so much as it is I want to say it, subjugated nation or client state versus.
So here's a little aside: is NATO a taxation of those member groups?
Is NATO functional?
Oh, well, that's a different argument. They're trying to contribute to a localized or globalized defense network or whatever. So if one member isn't contributing, see ya. Like we're not calling to arms for her anymore. Like we're gonna have to have a way of having the financial. That will probably run through the civilization level government. Like that's how you can kind of manage that. It doesn't have to be done inter-alliance, because I think that alliances will form around civilizations versus the other way around. They're going to require them. They're going to be all here. Mm-hmm. Governments will have to form, etc. If you're part of the alliance, you're effectively kind of part of the government. So,
right. And I mean, like you said, with the alliances between states is more, I almost see that on more of a meta level, because obviously, even with geopolitics today, sometimes you're forced to work with people you really don't want to just because it's mutually beneficial for everyone involved. The idea when I see guild alliances, it is something that's mutually beneficial, but you actually, it's a trust type thing. And I see this more evolving on more of the minor scale of things, like guilds within a city rallying together, to defend said city through whatever it is that they may be, are to attack said city. You know, your guild is a ruling nation of a node who is had their progress halted, or is even maxed out, and you're worried about competition. So what do? You're going to launch an assault against neighboring nodes. So what do? You don't have the numbers by yourself. You need more allies to help with the conquest or the defense of said nodes. And so you would come up with some sort of profit sharing agreement. And that's kind of what I'm thinking with profit sharing. Whenever you start doing alliance, how is the booty handled? You know what I mean? Like, you can trust the human element, or you can trust the system element. I mean, the system element's a little bit nicer to have, that you could, you know, if you take a city, let's use the guild example here. When you kill a guild and say, or, you know, kill a guild, you kill whatever, you win a guild war, and let's say, you know, Sinbad's example of you take part of their money. What if it was not handled by the individual players so much as it was handled by a system going, okay, now it's going into the system coffers to be distributed based on the rules that was set forth by the members who entered the alliance agreement? You know, like monies or whatever are transferred that way.
You could do a percentage off that too, so that way it's not something that you have to work on too hard. You can basically do a percentage per guild. Like, let's say you have a smaller guild that's only going to contribute a little bit. You could do 10% to them, and then a larger guild you could do like 50%, for instance, and so on. One thing I was, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go for it. I was, yeah.
One thing I was thinking along with that is that, you know, as far as, you know, communication between different guilds and different alliances, you know, there should be a way for the leaders to be able to talk specifically and privately right there without having to leave the game. You know, because that way they can coordinate a little bit better to, you know, basically attack another guild or another alliance, or they can coordinate for their trade routes. And even having like a heads-up display or some type of map that they can put, you know, routes on, or they can put coordinates on, so they can, you know, basically manage that at a general level. And I mean, like, a general as in like a commander of an army. You know, because that's really what it's going to come down to in these really large conflicts, is being able to coordinate the entire battlefield. You know, multiple different units coming in different areas.
So I like where you're going with that one. In fact, the thought that I have here is what tools can actually exist within the mechanics of the game to actually make an alliance tangible. Mm-hmm. The thing that's been missing from so many games in the past is, okay, so you're in a guild, you can't flag on each other and, you know, PK a person. Or how do you extend that at an alliance level so that you guys, maybe your names reflect a different color, kind of like with a party system or a raid system, so that you can easily identify, because I think all of us here as guild leaders, you know, current or past, have had that fallout where, oh, your guild member just flagged on an alliance member, and now you need to put out that fire. What level of mechanics can exist at that level that we could see and really feel the alliance?
My question is that something you really want? And the reason why I say this is the idea of betrayal. That idea of you're going to war, right? And somebody swayed that other alliance, and all of a sudden you're all marching. What I'm trying to think of the movie. I can see the scene in my head where they're all in the field and they're like, well, come on down, and the guys are just like, and they just turn around and walk the other way, and it's like, oh, that's not good. I can see the scene in my head, but I can't remember the movie now for the life. Oh, it was.
No, I see where you're going with that.
Braveheart.
Yeah.
Yes.
With the guys up on the field, like, you know, he's calling for the cavalry to come, and they got paid off. So all of a sudden, all the cavalry just, with a grin on their face, turn off and run away.
That's where diplomacy comes in, and that's also where subterfuge comes in. You know, basically being able to turn an alliance on itself, or being able to plant spies that can gather that information from, you know, a weak point in that alliance. Like a small guild, for instance, maybe they have access to that map, and your spy is in the council of that guild, so they can see it too. So that's part of it. You have to have really good relationships with people that you trust. That builds that inner community. Otherwise, you're not going to have that trust. You're going to be less willing to join an alliance.
Well, even with alliances are just that. They're based on mutual. You know, just in standard, the circles of trust, as you will, generally extend outward in terms of, in a more realistic sense, you got your close family, your extended family, your friends, and it goes out from there. The same thing would apply in guild. Who do you trust? First off, it's yourself. Maybe, I don't know, maybe you're untrustworthy. Hopefully you trust yourself. But you extend outward, and as and it works perfectly. Who do you trust? Your group of friends. Your group, your smallest tangible asset is the people who you would trust the closest, hopefully. And then as you extend out, to a lesser extent, I trust my guild, at least the majority of them. And that's where, as we talked about in the previous episode about permissions and stuff, like, hey, they're my guildies and I want to trust them, but I'm not quite there yet, And then alliances, once again, you hit that level of trust going, this is a much larger, we're in this for mutual benefit, but what happens when the benefit shifts and it's no longer in my best interest, or their best interest, to be part of this alliance? So when you brought up the idea of a map for controlling, we had talked about earlier being able to see alliance movements. Wouldn't it be interesting, like, if you wanted to disclose that, you could? Or you could decide not to. You could see the pings on the map, but maybe not allowing other commanders through a GUI. Like, it would be a choice you could have for battles of going, I want my other commanders to see my battle placement, or I don't.
So here's a little fun little aside for that part. So think about if an alliance level mechanics, if you want to have that be something people can interface, it also has to have a real world scrying table or something like that that's actually in the city somewhere, like in the metropolis, in some building. A spy, or rogue or whatever, could come and watch the movements by secret whenever he can and report that back. And that's one way, instead of actually having to get a mole in, it's actually just going and doing it by, like a spy, So
that's interesting the way you say that, because then you're thinking about varying terms of an alliance. Would you have a possibility within the GUI to set terms? So things that you would agree to share, or things that you would agree not to share, essentially.
Right.
I mean, that happens in, well, I shouldn't say war now, but medieval warfare, whenever you hired mercenaries, there was an agreed upon cost for their service. The Roman Empire was and I love Roman history, so again, I'm pulling it in here, just like I did with episode 7. I pulled it up constantly. Whenever subjugated nations and stuff would join, or they were using those troops, yes, they may have used them as cannon fodder or whatnot, but they were given a certain level of the bounty, but it was based on participation of what they want or what the commanders were willing to pay them. Certain groups of people were not paid as well as others, obviously, through the huge economic disparity within Roman civilization. But those, like you said, the terms of the alliance, what are the terms of the alliance? Could we set those? And then there you go. You're once again using a system to handle the monetary gains, the rewards, which is something I would agree is probably a good thing to have, because we can agree, all 4 of us, we're 25%. Okay, that's great. But I'm the one handling the money, and I got the money, and you're like, okay, where's my 25%? Oh, well, I'm holding 1 million gold. Yeah, we only got 100,000, so here you go, guys. Because it's a virtual world, there's no way for you to kind of look over my shoulder and go, that's a pretty big virtual bag there for 100,000 gold.
There is a way, affected by what is present in the guild itself. So let's just kind of hypothetical. So we're a military civilization, and we have a lot of emplacements and things that cost a lot of money. It's not going to be like, oh yeah, we don't have any money. Like, sorry, but there's more stuff over there than you should have. So where did that? It's going to have to come to that trust thing again. Like, if you're able to put these things up that other people didn't know that you were doing, you're going to break like the meta terms of the alliance. I don't know if there's any way to enforce that within a game like contract though. So that's my.
I don't think you'd have to enforce it through a contract. It's more through the whole basically that strategy of mutually assured destruction.
Right.
If you betray me, we're going to be at war. I'm going to bring my friends, and we're going to kill you.
And your house is going to burn.
That's basically the gist of it, right? Like, you want to basically come after them as a betrayer. That's the understanding going into an alliance. If you betray this trust, the other members in the alliance are going to go come kill you. And that's just how it's going to have to be in order to really keep the peace.
Yeah.
Or do you dare touch on the topic of corruption for breaking an alliance or causing an action that would be deemed to level a degree of corruption against the guild or the guild leaders who took said action?
Well, that's of the notion of being part of an alliance and falsely leading people, like you say, starting a war that would only benefit you. You know, hey, this other guild's causing issues for me. You know, how do you track it outside of an alliance other than saying, hey, my guild's being attacked by Sinbad's guild over there, so let's all go wipe them out. And here, they never once raised a finger to me, you know, but I wanted their land. So
to an extent, I don't think there should be that, though. I mean, it should be more, in a sense, almost like Game of Thrones, where you have these varying levels of different groups vying for power, right? Like, you should have that freedom to be able to betray someone else. You should have that freedom to trick someone into doing something you want them to do. Like, that should be that intrigue within the game, because if you take that away, or if you make it too limited, or you give too harsh of a punishment, you take away a lot of the interesting factors of a game that can really drive a storyline, or
Totally
really drive
the immersive gameplay is the term. Yeah, that level of immersive game or emergent gameplay is something that is almost unique to this style of game. And honestly, the only game nowadays that has that level that is, I guess, super active would be Eve. You know, with that level of political intrigue throughout. And it's something that, like I said, I'm not a huge sci-fi guy. I like fantasy. So I've always loved the concept of Eve, but because the theme is not something I could really get into personally, it's hard for me to get into that one. But knowing when Ashes of Creation is essentially fantasy Eve, I'm just like...
So the reason why there's, other than just people like to fight, in Eve, the strife is generated because there's a limited amount of places you can get the resources that create everything in the game. The moons that you mine make everything. They're the source of all of the high-end technology. So that specific scarcity, and that there's a distribution of the scarcity around the world, you know, the universe in that game, makes it so that people are vying for the better places to gain equity or gain income. So my opinion is that there's going to be a lot of initial alliances that people want to be grouped together, and then the harsh realities of, oh well, we can't share resources the same way that we intended. Well, like, what are we going to do, kind of thing. It's going to be hard to force an alliance versus one that's done out of mutual neighbors trying to defend your land. So it's a very interesting thing. I'm curious to see if there's going to be a global type of alliance that can keep that stable. That's going to be really hard to do. So
with the limited fast travel, I find that what's the point if Telchar, you and we form an alliance that we will come to each other's aid no matter what. You're on the south side, I'm on the north side of the continent. Like, as far away as you can get, you're under attack. If there's no, depending on how large the world is, obviously, if it literally takes me hours to get to you, what's the point? Like, how am I going to? How is our alliance beneficial?
That's all in the mindset of you could think of that. Let's say the third person in this group is a larger bad guy, and we both can't fight them head on. We have to do this so we don't just get absorbed by the Mongol horde. So it has to happen. So it could be something like keeping military assets closer, deploying them closer to where they're at a standing ready situation where they're ready to go deploy to help you, and along the DMZ between the the bad guys, we have a well defended border that's been paid for by the mutual NATO cost.
Well, you have to also consider that there's going to be large enough guilds in here that they can control multiple nodes. And then if multiple of those guilds get into a large alliance, you could basically have just one group that takes over an entire server, right? So even if you might have a guild on the other side of that continent, and that continent might have a large space in between, you could have multiple other guilds in between that can help funnel resources and basically back you up. And then you can also have these really large-scale continental movements where you could basically come in and attack from their south side of this other alliance. It really is still important to have those relationships when you do have these giant groups coming in. Yeah.
The thing with it, and you said about these global people being able to control, I do think, and I think we talked about this on one of the shows, I'm trying to remember, the idea of nothing is going to be consistent forever, because here's the problem. When you have one of these massive guilds, right, that can control a server, what's going to encourage these people to keep playing once they own everything for months and there's no change whatsoever, like at all? Like, okay.
Well, wasn't that battle that happened in Eve between Imperium and like a bunch of other guilds?
Yep.
It's the same thing. They held a huge area of land, right, or a huge area of space, I should say, and they held that for a while, right? And it took an alliance of other guilds to basically beat them. And there still is that sense of pride and the sense of power, that sense of like craving for more, that keeps larger guilds like that running to an certain extent.
Absolutely.
My thoughts on the large group ability to take over the entire server is it's going to be a numbers game. So there will be a split of various different, unless they're able to pick and choose which ones they want to be their idealized civilizations, and they can concentrate their power in that. Like, let's say their main hub is an economic one, and they just make sure that they always are the leader through the cash flow system or whatever that is. But they also want to make sure that we don't just get random new people coming and flooding into the scientific node that then create a more democratic thing that can just flip the switch. Oops, we lost the power. So that's the worldwide control of it will be a massive task. And unless we get organizations that are as big or bigger than what Eve has in this game per server, I don't foresee it existing for very long, because there's always going to be insurgents or whatever you want to call it within the groups that can wait for the weak opportunity to attack the weakness. And there goes all the work. So.
Well, I mean, that's part of the alliance system, though, as far as, basically what happens if a couple guilds that are 200 members, 300 members strong join together. They can effectively control a huge region at that point. And then, what happens when you try to butt into their region for resources? You're going to have to face up against them. That's a huge amount of space you have to defend.
Kind of just to continue on the topic, that we're kind of, I think, maybe finish it off even if we want to move on, that we're talking about, rare assets, things that are, only one or two people can have this one mount, this one thing, this one item, etc. Is every alliance member going to be happy with the situation of the disbursement of the very rare things? What if the guild or the alliance leader is the one that always has the castle? It's just his friends that get to ride the mount. What if another group wants to go have the dragon or whatever, wants to be the leader? Is that something that they're going to be able to keep the external people,
happy?
Keep them happy.
You always have splinter groups because of that. And I mean, that will essentially break alliances, because you're going to be splitting off and going from there. All right, so that kind of ends our alliance. And the last thing we have to really talk about, I mean, we did talk a lot about alliance stuff, as I have to pull back up my map here of where we're at. The last thing we really need to talk about is miscellaneous guild functions. And I only have like two things here that I wanted to ask about. And it's mostly concerned with recruitment and a little bit with the idea of inter-guild relations. What kind of miscellaneous guild functions are of use? Like, do you guys foresee guild forums on the official forums, like a place for guilds to either A, recruit, and or B, discuss alliances in a public way as being something that would be useful or detrimental? Belewyn, why don't you go ahead, since you're a moderator of the forums?
Yeah. So just from a statement of our forums here with Ashes, we encourage that. We want to see those communications between the guilds on the forums. Go at each other, keep it civil, don't obviously flame each other, but that's what they're there for. Build those animosities leading up to launch, because we don't want to see a peaceful, everybody's happy and getting along at launch. We want to see that struggle. We want to see the development, and we want to encourage them to get to a point where they want to do a siege on a node. So those forums are a starting point. Are they great long term? Maybe not so much. We could look more towards the mechanic that could potentially be in game to maybe post a recruitment message. But at this stage, I think the forums are a great tool. Long term, though, is it really something that you're going to look at every single day? As someone who is just, let's say, John Doe, who plays the game 4 hours a day, he's not really going to want to spend time there in those forums digging through that. It's going to have to be very easily and readily available in order to interest him to use it.
So the only thing I really got confirmed out of there is that Belewyn is insanely bloodthirsty. Because, I mean, we all heard that, right? No,
I plead the fifth.
Yeah, we want you to fight. Come on now. No. I early stages recruitment's interesting for forums, but like I've seen forums on the official sides in other things. Just they become recruitment threads that people bump every once in a while if you need people. I don't find them as useful personally as I do. World of Warcraft did a guild search that essentially allowed you to register your guild. You were able to select, put your name, all the fun stuff, and it listed all like what you could see from their armory. Like, this is the DCN guild. They have X members, and then we were able to check boxes as to what we were interested in doing. Like, you have your PVX guild, where you're able to select, okay, we do PvP, or if you're only doing one thing or whatever you're focusing on, you could do that. And you could set yourself up for recruitment, and people could actually even request to join you from there if that was something that, you would allow to happen. I thought that was really interesting because it allowed for, while you were playing, say you run across a guild, and you're like, wow, they seem really organized, I'm curious, and you type their name into the search function, and it pulls up their little page, and then you were able to then advance your desire to join or not to join from that window. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, so we've actually been really kind of along the same line of thought. When it comes down to it, we would like more functionality, though. We want to be able to see, are they a PVX guild? Are they PvE, or PvP? Are they going to be raiding primarily? Are they going to be doing crafting primarily? We want to know exactly down to the nth degree what that guild is about. And so in that search functionality, there should be like an advanced tab where you can just filter all that.
So
and then you can
basically
narrow it down.
Are you talking about like selectable table elements? Like, say, so it would be something by default rather than like a free text forum like what you have with our forums today?
Well, not necessarily in the forums, more like in-game, basically being able to search the different guilds. So that, to me, that is like a more advanced way, a more specific way of finding who I want to play with. Which is really important. You don't want to play with a guild that just is advertising as like, hey, we're a large guild that's doing, X, Y, and Z. I want to know that this guild is going to be playing at the same time I'm playing, either Pacific Standard or Eastern Standard or whatever time zone. I also want to know if they're going to be doing the things I want to do. Like basically, if I'm a really hardcore PvPer, I like to just do arena all day. I want to know that this guild is all about arenas. Because that way you can really find a really good fit for you. That should be what it's about when you're searching for a guild, is finding a guild that's your home. So being able to narrow it down that much, I think, would be a very good add-on for that search function that you're talking about, Joss.
I like that idea.
And here's the thing, like Belewyn said, forums right now, wonderful, because what else do we have, right? I mean, you have your community sites and stuff like that, and that may or may not have guild listings, but that's really the only place you go if you're looking for these pre-launch guilds. Now, once you're in game, I'm sure anyone who looks at website analytics, pre-launch, everyone's viewing the site. As soon as the game launches, you're going down. People aren't going to be using the forums as often. Now, there'll be a few diehard, but I can tell you right now, the forum usage is going to drop exponentially once people are in the game, because it's like, okay, I was on the forums to talk about, the game that I wanted to play. Now it's here. The only time I'm ever going to go to the forums is if I'm here to complain about something, and that seems to be how it is. So, like, having in-game tools is something I'm really in favor of, because, like I said, that I'm already in the game. Why do I want to break my immersion and go out when, if it's available within the game console, to be able to access these things?
Yeah.
Telchar.
So one of the things that kind of jump off that end game, I think this is a good point to do it too, if we can start transitioning to this in terms of just the gaming environment in general. We're going to have guild halls, right? They exist physically within the world. I think it would be really cool if they have like a public service kind of place that every city or higher level thing has, where people can go to request information about a guild. It'll have a posting, and like maybe as part of a thing you can have in it, you can pay to have your advertisement up on a board or something like that. And there might be an NPC or a player could man that during like hot hours or something to answer any questions. And there's going to be kind of a market in the game so that people can see the guilds. They can go and visit the guild hall and be like, dang, these guys have all these trophies from all this cool stuff that they've done. Let me go look at the actual description of what they have. And you go and talk to a character or NPC, and it'll list, this is when we play, here's the stuff we have, here's the officers, etc. That would also tie in to the website or an API. It would basically be a direct pull from whatever place that you want to do that on. It could be on the forums, and it would be like a generalized thing that will just get pulled into the guild hall.
Like a guild showcase.
Showcase, yeah. And if someone applies, it goes. They can apply in game at the guild hall or at one of those public service places or on the website. Either way, and that all gets fed to the leadership. Hey, we have a new applicant. Here's his application. Blah 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 blah. So,
yeah. It's actually funny you mentioned that, because they have mentioned about having these public service buildings within the game already. Those of us who are, bought into the Phoenix Initiative know that when we go into, I guess, quote unquote, the, town hall, there will be an instance for us to go into. But that town hall can serve that function you're referring to, that guild listing. You go into the town hall, you talk to an NPC or a board, and you can go through those listings. And that, I love those ideas because it's that immersion factor. Right. Some people are like, why can't I just have a GUI that I can pull up when I'm out in the field?
You can do that too, but having that extra layer is fun.
It makes it feel more like a world than a game to me. That's what I feel.
Like. Just a little, like a cool thought. Like let's say you could pay a town crier or something to go and like, hey, like the Sons of the Seven are recruiting, like a guy that just walks around or goes and visits a minstrel that you can have him sing a song or something,
And that's actually a good gold sink, if you will, because as economies go, money keeps going into the economy, and then prices get higher and higher. When you have gold sinks to drop, guilds could, like you said, pay a town crier, hear ye, to do recruitment, if you will, in a lore fashion. I think that would be actually really neat to see.
So, I like your thought there, but as somebody that moderates chat nearly all day, the one thing that would come is it becomes something that you quickly ignore. My thoughts are more along the lines of, if you're a guild that is let's say seated inside of a node, what elements of customization would we have on the buildings themselves to display your guild logo as a marketing tool? And then your ownership within that community or that node is then reflected across how many builds or how many buildings reflect your logo.
Right.
Now, just because it's drawing a blank on me right now, I know some of the pledge packages. Am I right in that they were able to design guild logos? I feel like that was something, but maybe I'm thinking of something else.
The Leader of Men one was like a guild tabard, barding, and additional customization options.
You could also get an NPC you could design.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Then I'm thinking of maybe another game that did it, because I like Belewyn said, the idea of doing guild heraldry, that's awesome. But at some point, how do people differentiate between heraldry, right? Because eventually, if you can't design something unique, which obviously I'm 100% for, because otherwise we'll just see phallus pictures everywhere, because that's what happens when you let people import their own stuff, My major horror from when I played ArcAge was when they allowed people to import pictures to put in their houses, and when I walked through a housing section, seeing a bunch of half-naked Asian girls posted on the wallpaper on the outside, I'm like, how did this pass quality control? Just if you're going to let players do that, obviously you can't trust players because that's what they will do. But at some point, is there going to be enough of a diversity of items and heraldry that you could actually go, wow, hey, that's recognizable? And then if there's enough, is there going to be a way of quote unquote copywriting your your logo layout. It has to be fairly, you pick like an icon that you want to show, and then you could do your banner. But if you could copyright it, you'd have to have a lot of options, obviously. But if you could copyright it or earn the ability to copyright it through being a massive guild or something, or doing something, so that way when you see a logo, oh, that red field with the star and then the little checker, that is Sinbad's guild, like, because he's the only one who can have that flag pattern. No one else can select that certain pattern.
I think that would be. Oh, go ahead, Belewyn.
I like where you're going with this one, but then when you look at it, so you're going to have a level of approvals or moderation, if you will. So the man hours that have to go into manually approving or saying, sure, we could offer a cash shop item, like, it's been the trend in the earlier Kickstarters to where you could possibly have that herald, or later on down the game you could potentially earn it. But how does that level of a moderation come so that you can ensure it's copyright, and how do you rule out human error?
And I'm actually 100% fine with not allowing custom stuff, because then you're getting into a whole legal battle of, oh yeah, it might be an okay item to have, but how do you know the person who gave it to you has the rights to that logo, right? But I mean, even if it was you guys presented just stock vector items, and I say you guys as Intrepid, but because you're moderate, but Intrepid does stock vector items, right, that you can get, whatever, and has an excessive amount of items, and whatever they would be of various images. Like, my goodness, I pull up my phone right now, the amount of emojis I have are insane. Now, most of them are stupid, but still, the idea is, okay, you have 3,000 vector images of whatever, and then you also have banner colors, and then possibly like banner, like patterns. But once you lock in a pattern, and that it would become locked to your guild, whatever, so that no one else could pick that pattern. If you had enough numbers, it physically, like you said, if you had 1,000 of each, that's 3,000 combinations. The math is there that even if every person created their own guild, it would still allow for a level of uniqueness in banners, even if it's only slightly.
Yeah. You could do that easily with databasing. I mean, all you're going to have to do is set a null value for something once it's been redeemed. Like you're talking about a stock selection of images. You can select a combination, but once that combination's been locked in, database code it to where that one's no longer available. It's a possibility, and it wouldn't really require any moderation or man hours to manage.
Right. Because like you said, all the images are pre-approved because they're just vector images, and then it's the combination that gets coded.
I mean, if you have enough customization to go with that, I think that'd be fine. But if you have too limited of a database, basically you don't have enough images in there, enough customability to be able to make enough unique banners, I don't think you should. I think you should be able to, do whatever you want to do. And if some guild copies your design, just go kill them and take their banner.
I like that idea.
It gives you basically a reason to go after them, because they're copycats. They're copying our guild. Yeah. So then you basically have a reason to go attack them.
Yeah. I would like to see. I can understand like not having just open like emblem submission and then having to have the moderators deal with all that. I would be willing to pay an amount for an approval, like $50. Submit this well thought out and design that's your, guild's external emblem that you want. It has to meet certain guidelines, lore fitting, et cetera, or it has to be within reason. Here's the payment to have the moderator time working on this, basically, and it's basically you putting a serious amount of effort, monetarily into it. It's not going to be troll because that's out of the troll's budget. I mean, I guess it could be. So people might still do it, but you've still benefited.
Well, yeah, no,
it's still benefited, right? And if still made the money.
If the price was up there, I'm talking like let's make it up to $500 or something like that. I know what you said, but I mean, if it's up there and a guild wanted to buy it, a guild would put in the money. I mean, obviously, whenever we see stuff, like a lot of us do a lot of work for our guilds, like Telchar, you're a guild, you probably front a lot of, if there were any cost, you probably front it. I do the same thing with DCN. I front all the cost. Yeah. But in a lot of guilds, the idea of these high prices are meant to be a collaborative thing where people get together and crowdfund going, hey guys, we want to buy this. If everyone in our guild we have 50 people, if everyone chips in $10, skip going to McDonald's for a day, chip in $10, we can get our guild logo, in there.
Proof, yeah.
And that's different. But I mean, and from Belewyn's point of view, like you said, the cost would have to be pretty substantial, only due to legal ramifications. Because once again, you would have to provide proof that you own said image, or they would have to be able to run image against a copyright database to go, I didn't go and steal Exxon's logo or something, or I just randomly pulled out a company who owns the copyright of said image.
Yeah, that would have to be part of the SOP for the emblem approval. They'd have to have someone that knows about that kind of stuff and can do a quick bit of searching for it, and then also add in the stipulation, like if this is ever discovered to not be your property, because like some guilds out there have intellectual property. Like my guild, we have IP on our creative design. It's ours. Like it's copyrighted.
Same with us.
if we're able to provide that as maybe even part of the documentation process, like, hey, here's the proof. Like, it makes it and obviously it'd have to fit within the guidelines of, it can't be this huge giant thing, but a certain rule set of what it can fit into. I think that's within reason because it's not. It's a brand, right? Like a lot of people are branding their guild within the game, and you can take that as far as like. The content you generate for videos and stuff is based on the brand. So I would like to see them support that if it's possible. I don't want to take away other development time for that. It's kind of more of like a tertiary thing for me. So
right.
I like that idea. Plus, you could also use that towards the esports arena. You're basically having your custom guild logos in there. You're recognizable. You have sponsors. Now you know who this is.
And that's happened in other games like Dota and League. They have their own special emblems. The teams do, and the company people have recognized that it's a specific thing within those groups for that. And I would like to see them support a certain level of investment into branding the characters and guilds internally. It's up to them to decide the cost of that. That's fine, but I would like to see that. So.
It would be definitely neat, like if they could come away of bringing up the cost for such a thing, and being able to cover themselves legally. Obviously, is one of the more important things. So. All right, guys. I mean, that's kind of everything we got here. Once again, this is another episode of From the Ashes of Creation podcast from the Dungeon Crawler Network. I want to thank my co-host, all of them, for showing up yet again. So, let's see. I wonder if Belewyn, are you back?
I am.
Okay, great. I just want to make sure I saw the message. So, where can people find you? What would you like to say? This is your plug time. Go nuts.
Awesome. Thanks again for having me back this week. It's pretty easy to find me on the official Ashes Discord or the official forums within the community. Feel free to reach out, send a DM. I am online way too much. So if you're there, you're probably going to see me.
Excellent. And Sinbad, where can people find you?
Yeah, of course. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on again. I appreciate it. So you can find us on our website, on our Discord, on the official Ashes of Creation Discord. All the links will be posted as well for you guys.
Absolutely. And Telchar.
Thanks for having me again. We got into some pretty deep stuff, and I hope that we can generate some more food for thought for everybody out there in the community with this kind of heavy meta talk. And I hope to join on again at some point to talk about it again when we get more info.
Absolutely. I do want to thank all of you guys for showing up. I mean, you guys are fantastic. You all did amazing these past 2 episodes that I've had you guys on. So thank you so much. And I mean, obviously, you may not realize it, but now you're permanently on my list of potential co-hosts for whenever I want people for this kind of stuff.
Awesome.
Guess what? You win. Yeah, so thank you so much, guys. It was really fun. I mean, I hope you guys had fun. I had fun.
I had fun.
It was
had a lot of fun, yeah.
Blast.
Yeah.
And I hope the community, of course, appreciates and does this kind of stuff. Because I know during this early time in the game, it's one of the reasons why we committed to doing a weekly show is something that we wanted to be able to provide something for the community to talk about and think about and continue to remain hyped for as we watch the development of Ashes of Creation. And I mean, that's something that we are committed to doing, and you guys have helped. You guys, it's amazing you guys are doing that. So definitely, guys, if this is something that you were interested in, check out their guild stuff. If their ideas for guilds interested you, check them out. They're cool guys. I mean, and ladies. I've talked to all of them for a while now. So like I said, I've had the opportunity. Really cool people, and I really do appreciate it. So thank you guys so much for coming on. And this has been From the Ashes of Creation podcast from Dungeon Crawler Network. Check us out, dungeoncrawlernetwork.com, where you can find all the stuff we do, youtube.com/Dungeon Crawler Network, Facebook, Twitter, all those things. Just search Dungeon Crawler Network. You'll probably find us. Or in this case, for this specific show, Ashes Podcast. If you like following on Twitter, that's really cool. You'll probably be able to see the links at the end of this, because when I edit it all in, they'll be there. Thank you so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and we hope to see you in Ashes of Creation. See you later, everybody.
Bye.
See ya.